How about now? I bet you got me now. All right. Sorry about that. Did they hear me online, or do I need to repeat myself? Repeat? All right. Welcome to Allegiant Church and Creative Ministries for our Wednesday night Bible study. If you are live with us tonight, whether online or in class, feel free to join in with a chat or with a question that you might have or a comment that you might have. And if you're watching later, still feel free to respond or to send us an email if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make. Okay, I think we're ready. We have prayed, and we are praying for your needs. So that's the other thing. If you haven't sent in your needs to us, please let us know so that we can be praying for you. All right. How many of you, I can't see the ones of you online, although you can chime in for us, and we'll see if anybody's out there live with us right now that is willing to answer this question. How many of you have voted already? Okay. Significant number of people have already voted. Everybody online throwing a thumbs up or anything? Not yet? All right. We have a little less than a week before this election is over, and hopefully a little less than 2 months before we know the outcome. That was a joke, I hope. We're not real sure at this point. It's hard to say. But I, for one, and I think many of you probably out there too, will be delighted when this thing is over. On the other hand, we're a little nervous about what the outcome might be. I heard somebody say the other day, and I think it was a good analogy. They said, I don't know, if you go to get a screening for cancer and now you've got to wait on the results, is that a good time or a bad time? It all depends on what happens when you get the results, right? But we're going to trust God no matter what. Amen. And we're going to see what He's got in mind. But all right, so I promised that we would finish up some of the questions that came in when we started looking at some of the different topics going on, and that's my plan tonight, is to run through that. I don't think on Wednesday night I've had a chance to really say this yet, but one of the concerns that I have in not just this election, but just in the trend generally over the last little while, but it's gotten worse in the last few weeks, if you guys haven't noticed it, and that is this this vitriol that has been increasing against people that aren't like you, I guess. One group attacking another, but it has not been, for the most part, this is going to maybe make somebody mad, but the truth is, if you go back and you look, it has not been the Trump campaign that's been putting out the worst vitriol lately. Over the last few weeks, they have referred to Donald Trump as Hitler. They referred to his Madison Square Gardens discussion as a revisiting of or a revision of the 29 Nazi rally. Well, let me just touch on that real quick. What are the differences between the 1929 Nazi rally at Madison Square Gardens and the one that occurred a few days ago? Number one, there was no KKK at this rally. Not at least, I can't say there weren't any members, but there wasn't anybody marching down the aisles like there was in 1929. Now, Hillary came out and talked about how horrible it was and how this was a repeat of all that. That was Hillary Clinton, by the way. Came out and basically said that, FDR was shocked and he couldn't believe that they were doing this in 1929. The truth of the matter is Hitler had a pretty good relationship with Hitler up until, did I say that right? Roosevelt had pretty good relationship with Hitler up until he couldn't sustain it anymore. Roosevelt liked a lot of Hitler's policies. He followed him on a lot of policies. And fascism was not something that was limited to Italy and Germany. It went around the world, and the United States had Nazi training camps, and the United States had all of that. So anything other than that is revisionist history. It was here before. But the difference is that takeover, which is a part of the socialist movement, was a part of both socialism, communism, or all three really, but by that point we had communist Russia and we had socialist Germany, and both of those together had the same goal, and that was central planning and central control of the government. That was the idealism behind fascism and socialism. Nazism was an extension of fascism simply because, which, by the way, Mussolini, who invented fascism, came out of the socialist movement. So this idea that somehow that fascism was on the right is absolutely fake. The only thing right about fascism was that it was a little to the right of communism. And so the communists didn't like the fascists because they didn't go as far as the communists did. And the fascists didn't like the communists because the communists went too far. But they were not capitalists. If you go back and you study the history, and maybe I'll lay this all out for you at some point, but what you learned in school was wrong. It's just flat out wrong. Both Hitler and Stalin, Lenin, all of those hated capitalism with a passion. You say, well, wait a minute, but Hitler used capitalism. To a point, Hitler used capitalism. What he did was he basically put all the small businesses out of business and then used the large businesses toward his own ends by telling them what they could do and when they could do it and how they could do it. Does that sound at all familiar with maybe where we're getting today? Where large businesses get to control pieces of the government, pieces of our life, pieces of whatever. That was Nazism. Okay? And so take it however you want, but here's the deal. 1929, the Ku Klux Klan was mostly made up of Democrats. So this idea that a Democrat is now going to get on television and tell you that Donald Trump is just a repeat of that is to totally skew history. And there's nobody that will deny the fact that it came out of that. Okay? What else is different? There were Jewish flags flying at this rally. I can assure you there were no Jewish flags at the rally in 1929. There were Jewish speakers. I can guarantee you there were no Jewish speakers at the 1929 rally. If there's anybody that hates Israel right now, hint, it ain't the Trump camp. Okay? Check out your college campuses, check out your protests, check out whatever. If that's a little too tough for you, I'm sorry, because I know you have been clouded over by this education system that, by the way, got started under Wilson and under Franklin Delano Roosevelt to begin to manipulate history through the guy we've all talked about, John Dewey. And go read a little bit about him if you want to see how all these things started getting skewed and started getting turned down the wrong path. So they're not true. Anybody want to argue with me? No. Okay. Not in-house anyway. Go check it out. Go read the history for yourself. Do not trust AI. Okay? I have found that during this election that AI has tilted left every single time, and there is an article that I posted on my Facebook page you can go check out that said exactly that. I believe it was Wired Magazine, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was Wired Magazine that had put it out saying that AI leans left. Now, why is that true? Because most of the technology companies lean left. And so think of it like this. And we're going to go deeper into AI at some point because we need to understand what's going on with AI. But, and I like AI. There's many things I like about it. But you have to understand that AI was created in the image of its creator. So who is its creator? For the most part, leftist programmers in Silicon Valley. Microsoft, Google, okay, and the list goes on. Elon Musk has started OpenAI. It's going to be interesting to see how that works and where that goes. But right now, most of the AI that's out there is going to give you a skewed opinion for a couple of reasons. One is because its morality is based on the programmer's morality and its worldview and their philosophies. The other thing is because in their mind, Vox, for example, might be a worthwhile website to read, whereas Just the News is not. Just the News is John Solomon, in case you don't know. because Just the News leans right, Vox leans left. If AI is only looking at the left-leaning sites, then where is it getting its information from? Where is it learning from? Where is it getting its information to give you back when you ask it a question? Do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. All right. Hey, you guys told me a little while back y'all wanted to know more about AI. Do y'all want to go deeper into that at some point?
Yes.
Okay. We will, but not tonight. No. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taste and touch to see where all that was going. I will say that there has been progress, however, in the news media with NBC, CBS, ABC. Believe it or not, Donald Trump has only gotten negative attention about 86% of the time.
That is close.
And during his run against Biden, it was 98, I believe. So at least it's a little bit better. And I think I said this a while back, but it would be curious to see how different the polls would look if there was equal balance. Additionally, Kamala raised right close to $1 billion, I think a little over $1 billion. Trump raised about $300 million. So if you thought that you're seeing more Kamala ads than you are Trump ads, you're probably right. Okay? We have been inundated in the last 3 months with how great Kamala Harris is and how perfect she is after 4 months ago of hearing how terrible she was and how Biden needed to drop her from the ticket. Does anybody remember any of that? It's amazing how quickly the whole media atmosphere changed when she became the presidential nominee. But it's amazing how many people won't remember that. As my daughter shared with me, one of her colleagues, they were talking and they said that they thought that the assassination attempt was faked. And said, why do you think that? And their response was, because did you see how slow Social Security reacted?
Social Security.
So I'm just going to stop right there, all right? we're just gonna move on from there, all right? I am not one that believes everybody should vote. I'll just say that.
I agree with you.
I am one that believes that only people who have truly done their due diligence as citizens of the United States should actually vote. But okay. All right. So, any questions so far, or anything you want to make sure we cover in the next 45 minutes? So I don't skip over anything that's really, really hot on your agenda right now. All right. Then let's pick up where we started last time. A few new things about Tim Walz. There has been some additional concern about his ties with China. According to some reports, he has his first trip that he organized to China that he took students to was actually paid for by the Communist Party, by the Chinese Communist Party. Don't know for sure that that's true, but that's what's being reported in the news at this point. And obviously he has sentiments toward them. We knew that ahead of time. So there's been several concerns there. Also, by the tax nonprofit thing, I don't remember the name right off the top of my head, but the one who gauges how well states are doing with their taxes has rated Minnesota as the worst on taxes of all the states in the country. And one of the reasons they have done that is because he put on a gas tax that is very, very regressive, that is actually indexed by inflation. So that means that the legislature of Minnesota does not have to come back together to raise the taxes. It automatically gets raised as inflation goes up. And gasoline taxes is one of the most regressive taxes because it's going to hit the poor a lot harder than it is the rich. The people that can't hardly afford to get to work, it's just going to be worse on them. It's like Mike was talking about his buddy who had the big truck and didn't even notice gas prices went up. Okay? Most of us in this room probably noticed when gas prices went up, no matter what kind of car we drove. So just some things like that, and it goes beyond that. But he amazingly took billions of dollars that the state had in the bank, spent it all, and then went in debt. And he did that all while raising taxes at the same time. So, yay. That's what we're looking for, right? And had $250, I believe, million in COVID scams, basically, where they, so. All right. So just so you know who you're getting there. It's still hard to believe that she picked him. If she loses Pennsylvania, it will be because she, in my opinion, that she slighted a Jewish person in order to pick Tim Walz. And it could cost her the entire election if things are as tight as they say they're going to be. So, but she did not want to alienate the Palestinian protesters and so forth by picking Josh Shapiro. All right. Stop me anytime you have questions. All right. Trump came out with a new one. Did y'all hear it? It was kind of floated a few days ago, and then it kind of came out big last night. He's talking about doing away with the income tax. What y'all think of that?
How's he going to get the rest of the tax revenue?
That's a good question. All right. And it's a valid question. However, when did we start the income tax? Under Woodrow Wilson. So we went almost 100, well, no, a little over 100 years before we actually had an income tax in this country. Did y'all know that? A lot of our taxes came from tariffs on foreign goods coming into our country. So see how this fits right in with his idea of tariffs. Now, I don't have time to get into all the economics that go behind that. I have mixed feelings on tariffs. I will tell you that. I do think there is a use for them. I do think there is. I think it has been a mistake to flood our country with cheap foreign goods and let our own people get laid off because they didn't have a job, and that we have allowed our national security to be made vulnerable because, for example, we get almost all of our major medications from China. That's not good. And we found that out during COVID, didn't we? Because even the stuff like 3M had a ton of masks that were already in the pipeline, PPE masks, but we couldn't get them because they were being made in China, and China said, oh no, we're holding on to these because we might need them, or we want to use them to give to other countries who will sign off on getting 5G service from us, or routers from us, or whatever it might be. They used it as an economic and political ploy, even though these were American companies that had already paid for them, or at least had contracts for them. Okay, people may forget that happened in 2020, 2021, 2022, but that's what was going on. So if we get into another crisis, we do not want to be, in my personal opinion, y'all can argue with me if you want to, but I don't think we want to be in a position where we're trying to get antibiotics from a country who decides to hold on to them because they want to use them. Or PPE, or respirators, or whatever else.
Or use it for warfare.
That we're doing, or to use it, yeah. Okay, one of the questions we had was, what's up with IVF, or help me out here. Yeah, IVF. In vitro, thank you. In vitro fertilization. It just wasn't coming to my head at the moment. All right, so the Harris ads have been saying that Trump wants to stop in vitro fertilization. Is that true?
I doubt it.
He wants the government to pay for it.
Yeah, he's actually suggested that the government pay for it. I don't like that. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't. Trump is a populist, number one. He tries to rally people. And that's one of the reasons people have referred to him as Hitler. But the truth of the matter is there have been populists on both the Democratic and the Republican side throughout history. A populist does not make you Republican or Democrat. Populist just means that you try to fill where the voters want to be and you try to take them there. As a matter of fact, you can pretty much be a nothing and be a populist. Now, I don't believe Trump's that bad. I do believe he has some firm convictions on some things. But he is not a classical conservative in the sense that he believes that we really... Okay, here's the problem. On the one hand, he wants to bring Elon Musk in order to cut the budget. And that is an excellent thing because I showed you the debt clock. We have got to do something. If we don't do something, we are in deep, deep, deep trouble. You say, well, all the government has to do is print money. That's the government's right. Yeah, but when they print more money, it causes more inflation. This has happened in this goes all, even in the Roman Empire, they used to call it clipping the coin of the realm, where they would actually take shears and cut the coin because it wasn't worth what it used to be, and they would divide it. Okay, now we got two of them, but that coin still paid for what it bought before. It's just now you had two of them you had to spend. And that's what we've done with our dollars, whether they be digital or whether they be physical. And you guys do understand that most of our currency today is digital, not paper, right? Or coins. Probably one of the smartest things government could do is get rid of coins altogether. They cost us a ridiculous amount of money for just, how many of you know a nickel's not worth a nickel? How many of you know it costs more to make a nickel than it's worth? A dime, more than it's worth. Pennies, definitely more than they're worth. So we're spending all this money to create these coins that are worth less than what it cost us to make them. Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Now, these will also be some of the arguments that are used when they try to tell you that we don't need any kind of physical currency, that everything needs to be digital, and therefore all we really need to do is put a tattoo on your hand or forehead and we can pay for everything that way. Okay? And I realize I'm throwing a lot at you just to kind of get you started. I don't have time to go deep on any of these things, but if any of these things strike you and you want to know more about them, then we can take some time later and talk about some of these things. And some of them we will, because when I start getting into AI and I start getting into, we're going to do some stuff on end times and talk about how this might shape up based on where we are technologically now. I say might because we don't know when Jesus is coming back. We don't know when the Antichrist is going to come to power. But we can look at where we are right now and we can say, if we're near the end, this might be how it works out. Okay? So I think that's always worthwhile to talk about. It's funny, back a few years ago, anybody remember the Chick tracts, the little cartoon tracts that people would hand out? Anybody remember those? One of them actually, the UPC, y'all know what a UPC is, right? The little barcode scan thing you scan. That was going to be the mark of the beast. I really don't think we're going to have barcodes on our hands and head, okay? More likely it's going to be a chip, at least if we're looking at modern technology, because we can embed a chip. If we embed a chip right underneath the skin, just like we do for dogs and cats to track them, then our body actually stimulates the energy necessary to recharge them. Or we can use inductive charging if we need more than that. But heat differences and things like that can be used to charge them as well. So, but cats and dogs, we don't ever charge those. They're good for who knows how long. I don't know how long they last, but I've never heard of one going dead. What?
You got that at night, your bed could be a wireless charger?
Yeah, your bed could be a wireless charger. They used to give those copper things to put. Well, they still do, don't they? So this is kind of like that, only you're hooked up to the power grid, or to your windmill. Anyway, just having a little fun there, guys. But more likely, that's what we're looking at. The RFID stuff that's out there now, that's a whole nother thing. I don't know if you guys know about RFID, but RFID, those little plastic things you see on products that you buy, like when you go to Walmart, and there'll be just this little thing that's stuck to it. Those are RFID chips, and what they do is what the potential of them is. Let me put it this way: The potential of them is, or what they hope is going to happen in a few years, is that basically you'll be able to bring your buggy up to the self-checkout and you don't have to get anything out of your cart. It's just going to go, it's going to read all those RFID chips and tell you what your price is. If you come in, if you've got something that's still a part of your clothes or your shoes or whatever, which is part of what they want to do. Anybody ever seen the Food Line has its, what is it, VIP card?
Yeah, the MVP card.
MVP card, and then other places have similar types of products. The reason they use the reason they give you the deals by having those cards is so that they can see what your buying patterns are. And then they can analyze those buying patterns in order to determine how to market to you.
So it's tracking us, basically.
It is in many ways. RFID is going to take that to a whole new level because, for example, if RFID is in that shirt that you bought from, I don't know where you bought it from, but I'm going to say you bought it from Walmart, and you walk through the door at Walmart, they'll immediately know who you are and know what your buying patterns are. So all the signage and stuff in the store can start customizing itself to you. When you start walking down this aisle, that commercial that might be playing on that screen there might be oriented specifically to you. And you just thought it was a coincidence. Don't believe it. Just try talking about something and then opening up your phone and see if you don't see some ads that are similar to that.
You do. Okay.
Even on a smaller scale, your MVP card at Food Line, if you buy stuff on a regular basis and then you don't buy one time, you get a coupon for what you usually buy.
Exactly.
Like cat food.
That's the kind of stuff. Jeff Bezos has said that they are working, that's the owner of Amazon, for anybody who doesn't know the name. He has said that they are working on a ship and buy program. And basically, the way it will work is they will ship products to your home before you even know that product exists or before you know anything about it. You will get a product at your house, and then you can choose whether to keep it or to send it back. And he said this, the numbers that they have run, the analysis that they have done, they will know your buying patterns better than you do, and they will make so much money that the return shipping will be nothing compared to what they'll make off of you. Okay? So imagine that level of data analytics, and a world leader has the power to manipulate that. You can start understanding how the Antichrist could be so powerful, can't you? And that's just one aspect of all of this. Because we talked about AI. I truly believe that AI is going to play heavily into what the Revelation defines as the Antichrist and the beast.
And I think the Antichrist is going to be deceiving to know it's going to look good to us.
Oh, absolutely.
Whatever's going on, like, oh, that'd be convenient.
Well, especially to a generation that's never known what it is to be without a screen. It'll just wearable tech. That's what wearable tech or inserted tech. I mean, what's better than that?
Yeah.
Remember all the way back in the 1980s. Anybody remember the movie Back to the Future? Mm-hmm. All right, you remember the third one, right? No, the third one was out the West, wasn't it? There's a second one. The second one where he goes forward into the future, and he landed in that fountain, and then his coat automatically dried itself. You know, most people would find that pretty cool, right? But that kind of technology is just the smart technology, if you will. That's very, very hot right now, and we expect to see a lot of jobs move into that field in the next year or two. So AI is getting ready to make major, major advances right now. And AI is going to drive a lot of that technology. Because the problem is, I said that they will know when you walk in, but you understand it's not going to be a person that says, oh, Linda just walked in the door. No, it's the computer that knows that. And then the computer is going to customize your shopping experience for you. Maybe your cart will have a little screen on it that says, oh, we've got XYZ over on aisle 3. And they're going to know that it's something that you've bought before or something that you're likely to buy because of your profile or your digital fingerprint, so to speak.
subject, if you need to wait, fine, but how do you think the robots are getting to affect, like robots, I think now are actually in hospitals working and doing things, but
Oh yeah,
that'd be something
that will definitely
that
continue to expand. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because a lot of what's holding it back right now, just like this recent strike with the longshoremen, from an economic standpoint, and I'm not talking about from a job standpoint, and I'm definitely not weighing in on that because I understand people need to make a living, and I get that, and that's a part of what the labor union is trying to do. But the reality of it is, from an economic standpoint, it does not make sense to have people getting $30, $40 an hour to move stuff when machines can do it much, much more efficiently. They can do it 24/7 without any kind of break. Yeah, and now you still need people involved to make sure those things run and to do that stuff. But to actually have that physical labor, trains are in the same boat. I know Darwin was seeing some of that before he left that job. That basically the only reason the engineers are there now is because I think probably mostly because of the union, because they run themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And even jet planes. I mean,
They're just there just in case.
You're right.
This work.
Yeah, but as far as actually doing the stuff they used to do, they don't do that anymore, unless they absolutely have to. Most of you probably don't want to know this, but when that 787 lands at the airport, chances are that pilot did nothing to land that plane. It was all on autopilot. He's just sitting there in case the autopilot goes wrong.
I know when Papa was at the VA hospital, Jason and I would go every night, and we would always run into a robot every night that was bringing meds around to the patients.
Yeah. And you think about that, and I mean there are issues, and I won't get into all that, but just from a standpoint of just rationally thinking about this, that robot is not going to make as many mistakes. Now I don't know what that particular robot does, but the robot who does the dispensing of the medications and stuff is going to be a lot more efficient than a human because it doesn't get tired, it doesn't need coffee, it doesn't have a bad day. It's just doing its job. And so as long as, and there are still areas in that things can mess up, including programming or codes getting scratched or whatever. But overall, the same thing's true with self-driving cars. Now, I know those things, it's going to be a long time before I let a car take me on a trip. But the truth of the matter is they are far better, for the most part, than regular drivers. They don't get distracted. Now, you can have a sensor go bad, and then you got a problem. There can always be mechanical failures and stuff like that. But as far as reaction times, as far as things like that, even now they're better than most drivers. Of course, most drivers are a lot worse than they used to be. They seem to be so distracted nowadays. But overall, now what's scary, though, is when you start getting into the ethical side of some of these things and the ethics of AI. Because, for example, depending on how it's programmed and all, I'm not saying they're doing this right now, but they could. So you're going down, you're in your car and you're moving, and all of a sudden there's something that happens in front of you and the car is going to wreck. It's just going to wreck. There's no way around it. But there are two options the car can make. One of them is to take out the 80-year-old couple that's driving to the left, and the other is to take out the local congressman. Okay, depending on how that thing's programmed, I think most of us could see where it's probably going to take out the 80-year-old couple. Now, that one may not bother us as bad as this one. What if it's the congressman and a toddler? Or the CEO of the company that invented the cars in the first place? See, those are ethical decisions that it will know, because it will know what those cars, it will have the ability at some point in the future to be able to scan those cars around it and to know. And if we have RFID and we have all these, or some kind of newer technology that does that, it will know everything in its environment, and it will be able to do what a human could never do in a fraction of seconds. and then it will use a decision tree to decide what is the best decision. I'm not saying what's the most ethical or what's the most moral. What's the best decision based on its programming? Yeah.
We have a comment online that an individual has seen robotic guard dogs in distribution centers. They have charging platforms that look like a doghouse.
That's cool.
I mean, yeah, wow, but also scary.
Yeah. And if you haven't, that one I haven't seen. That's interesting. But if you go online, you can see the Tesla robots that Elon's making, and they are quite impressive.
Yeah.
So yes, that's coming. I guess is the short. And understand that we're talking about a couple of different things. The robot, that was probably more like a box with an arm or something. But there will be androids as well that look more human-like. And some of the stuff they're doing in robotics is absolutely, I mean, as a technologist, as a person who does this, I love this stuff. It's like great. But at the same time, I do recognize the misuse of it. That's the potential for the misuse of it. And there is a lot of that. Henry Kissinger, way back in the Nixon administration, said that if he just had enough information, he could run the whole world. And there are people that still, that's their goal, is to have the information necessary to run the world. And that's how the Antichrist will come into play. Okay. So very, very cool, but also very, very dangerous. It's the idea that all these things would be wonderful if there was such a thing as a benevolent dictator. But there is no such thing as a benevolent dictator, because as soon as people get power, we all know the quote, right? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. If there are no checks and balances. Okay. All right, spent more time on that than I meant to. Sorry about that. If that was not interesting to you, we'll move on. If it was interesting, that's good. But I think we were on IVF. We never finished that, did we? So we did say that Trump is not against IVF. However, we as Christians, we do have some moral problems, or should have some moral problems with IVF in general. IVF, as it is often practiced now, creates multiple embryos and only implants the embryos that are determined by the couple or whatever to put in. So in that case, you can end up with a bunch of embryos left over. In one court case, the refrigeration system failed, and the company was charged with the destruction of those babies. Interesting that on the one hand, you can kill them in an abortion, but if they die in a frozen lab, then it's, and we've always had that problem, because if a pregnant woman gets beat up by somebody and the baby dies, then that can be murder, right? But if an abortion doctor does it, then it's okay. We're conflicted, in case y'all didn't figure that out. As a society, as a culture, we're very conflicted. But with IVF, the problem is that if you only create what you need, then it becomes very, very expensive, because it doesn't always work, and you got to go back and you got to do it again, and it creates a bigger problem. Now, there is an alternative for Christians now with the situation, and they're called snowflake babies. And so if people are looking to adopt a child, instead of adopting a child, they can actually adopt an embryo. And they can have that embryo implanted and then have that baby. So there is the opportunity to adopt, and that's something we can do even if the government's not fixing the problem, so to speak. Then we as Christians, if we know people that are wanting children or whatever, we can encourage them, hey, consider going this route. And I would like to see them move into a position where this would become more common. Now, the problem with that a lot of times is the parents do not want to release those embryos to be adopted, and would rather have them destroyed, just as the same as somebody getting pregnant and having an abortion. But if we truly believe that life begins at conception, then those embryos are babies. And that's something we have to consider. Right? Comments, questions, thoughts? Now, if you don't believe that, then that's a different story. But
So why are they tying that in with abortion, saying that he wants to get rid of it? I don't understand the correlation.
the only thing I can figure at this point, I mean, they've done that on several points. They have lied about so many different things in this election. The Project 2025 just keeps coming up, even though he's not supporting that. The whole like a sales tax thing because of the tariffs. There's just been so many things. That's all I can figure is that he's trying to, because they had a commercial of a military wife. Have you seen it? And she's like, if we move to a state that doesn't, and that's going to be Donald Trump's fault. Well, how is that Donald Trump's fault? That's the state's decision. Yeah. Because what they want to do is they want to nationalize all these issues. They want to nationalize abortion. They want to nationalize IVF. They want to nationalize everything. Again, it's easy to get caught up in the stories, and a lot of these politicians are really good at putting people in front of the camera that make you feel for them. But at the end of the day, it's not about what we feel, it's about what's right and what's wrong. And that's what we've got to determine when we stand before God, what's going to be right and what's going to be wrong. And that's a harder decision. How many of you know some people that are very pro-abortion? Only I know more than one. Okay, we got several people. Okay, how many of you that know somebody who's very pro-abortion? They're also anti-death penalty. Mm-hmm. They don't believe anybody should die on death row. Mm-hmm. Yep. The two seem to go together, which is really funny to me. Okay, so here's an argument that I was thinking of the other day. All right, so because a woman came up to Charlie Kirk and she said, if your 10-year-old was raped, would you make her have the baby? Okay. And he did a very good job of answering it, I think. He said, yes, we would have the baby. He didn't say make her. He said, we would have the baby. At first, he didn't want to answer. He said, that's very graphic. She said, but it's reality. Okay, well, how real is that? It's not as real as they want to make it out to be. It doesn't happen every day like they want to seem to think it does. We're talking about a very small group of people that actually conceive when raped or whatever. It does happen. I'm not denying that, but it's not this huge. It's not the major issue. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way. But she said, so you're going to teach your daughter that she has to blah 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 blah. And he went in and he said America or the West. I don't remember exactly, but I'm going to put it in my own words. What he was basically saying is that as a Christian nation or as Christian people, whether you believe we're a Christian nation or not, but as a Christian people, we do not believe that we respond in kind to things that are done wrong to us. As a matter of fact, Jesus said, bless those that curse you, pray for those who spitefully use you. So what he was basically saying is that killing the baby is not the right thing to do. And in this case, you're not even penalizing the person who did it to you. You're penalizing this third party for what happened. And I thought, what I would have liked him to have said or to have asked her, I've just been curious how she would have responded to it, is, okay, so the 10-year-old gets pregnant from this guy, and now you find out who that guy is. Will you kill him? He caused the pain. Every time they see him, they're going to be reminded of that experience. And based on your experience, why are they willing to kill the baby but not willing to kill the one who actually did the harm? But I'd like to hear that answered from someone. Now, I'm sure they just blow it off and do something. But it's a good question, isn't it? Would you support the death penalty for rapists? And I can guarantee you that most people who stand for abortion would say absolutely not. But yet they're okay with killing the baby. Not only okay with it, they're adamant about it. Something seems wrong with our moral compass. Thoughts or comments? Okay. All right. Alrighty then. The pharma stuff, the price controls, everybody knows that's a mess. Harris did not fix the problem. Trump tried to do some things, and he made some right moves, and then Biden took them out. But he didn't fix all the problems. Even if he'd have stayed in, it wouldn't have fixed all the problems. And really, a lot of this comes down to, in my humble opinion, the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry is very, very powerful, and it has an awful lot of money that it puts in politicians' pockets. And we're going to have to deal with that kind of stuff before we're ever going to fix these problems. As long as they can lobby, as long as they can put money in politicians' pockets, as long as they can do whatever, it's going to be really hard to defeat that animal. Do we need to? Yes, we need to. I hate to tell you, but it has not gotten better under Obamacare.
They said it did.
Yeah, they say it did. It did not. So those are some things that we have to consider. And there's a bunch of other stuff. By the way, when I mentioned that $1 billion that Kamala raised, that's not all the advertising that's pro-Kamala. That's just what's in her war chest. That does not count all the money that comes from the super PACs and from the organizations and from the nonprofits and from all those people who are also throwing money behind that. And the truth is, from what I can tell, the research I've tried to do, we have no idea how much money that is, but it is a ton of money. So we are spending billions and billions and billions of dollars on a job that pays $400,000 a year. Why? Because it's power. What I'd kind of like to see, I know this is crazy, and this is very simplified, but what I'd like to see is no advertising, none. Zippo. You get the two candidates in a room. You have people on both sides ask questions. There is no editorial comment. There is no anything. Everybody gets to listen to these candidates talk. If they lie, it gets called out. For real. Both sides get to respond to it. And then let the American people decide. But this Hollywood-funded political campaign is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. Because we're being lied to, we're being tricked, we're being manipulated. We've got to do something. Now, a lot of that expanded and got worse. If you notice that it's been worse in the last few years than what used to be, it's because the Supreme Court ruled on Citizens United and basically said that although you can only give a little bit of money to your candidate, you can give a ton of money to the super PACs. And that's why the Netflix founder gave millions and millions, I think it was $30 million if I'm not mistaken, to Harris campaign. And that was just a little bit of, she raised $1 billion. Now keep them, well, her and Biden, I guess, together. But she's only been running for president for 3 months.
Seems longer than that.
And most of that money was sitting there waiting for her when they announced. This is not the way we should select our leaders. I'm sorry. And I don't care which side's doing it. It's ridiculous. And then how much money could you put into advertising, so to speak, for what the newspapers and the television networks and things like that have done to help out those candidates?
I think it should be equal across the board. The other candidates get the same amount of money, and that's it, no more.
And then don't let the news media poke their nose in it or something. I don't know what the perfect answer is, but I'm just trying to point out these are the problems. And what I haven't talked to you about, and I don't have time to do it tonight, but maybe I mentioned it a little bit last week. Did I talk to you guys about the media organizations that are created underneath? Okay, so like Media Matters and some of these guys, billions of dollars that these guys, and their job is not to put out campaigns in front of you. Their job is to start AstroTurf. They call it, they're trying to make it look like grassroots. Okay, let me give you an example here real quick. Then I'll cover a few things really fast. A few years ago, the South Dakota, the pipeline that went through South Dakota, I can't remember what the name of it was, but the Sioux Indian tribe was interested in it because it would have given them money and whatever. And of course, you had your pro side and you had your negative side and whatever. Well, there was a big post that was put online by this beautiful young woman, almost model looking, very sexy photo on her Twitter account. I think it was Twitter, it might have been Facebook, but whatever it was. And she basically chastised the pro-oil people because they were bringing their kids to these rallies. They ought to be checked into by child services. Okay? And that went viral, and people started commenting on it and blah, blah, blah. And a little bit later on, we found out this woman did not exist. She was a complete fake. It was a complete fake account, and it was a part of the system that's used when they want to smear somebody or when they want to put somebody down. Now, what might surprise you and what might really tick you off is the fact that a lot of these things a lot of these systems in order to create these robots. Remember Elon talking about the robots on Twitter? That's basically what he's talking about. They're virtual machines running virtual accounts using virtual photos that are promoting, and then they're all working together to build the audience of that post when they put it out. So that by linking here and here and here, you got all these different machines all over the world that are making it look like it's all over the world. A lot of times using technology to make it look like it's coming from different locations, and then all of a sudden you get this something that's trending, and now all of a sudden it becomes a big news story, and now everybody's believing it. But in reality, it was all fake to begin with, and the United States government has funded a lot of the technology development of that. I know you're going to get done with this election and say, what's it matter anymore? But you need to know, this is how, remember me talking about that we were going to talk a lot about deception? Mm-hmm. Look how we're being deceived. And I'm not making this stuff up. I can give you the resources. I know some people are like, oh, it's conspiracy theory. No, it's reality. And Brock, whatever his first name is, he was actually the one that broke a lot of the Clinton stuff early on, but then he turned to the other side. And he's been doing liberal stuff for the last, how many ever years now, since Bill and Hillary. They called him in and said, hey, why don't you work for us, so to speak? And he did. They brought a bunch of money together, and he made 1 year, we don't know how much he made, but 1 year, according to documents, he made at least $15 million doing this kind of stuff. Okay? A lot of the editorials that you read in the newspaper, they're not written by the people who signed them. They're written by ghostwriters. And so you think you're getting all this information from people you trust, and all they did was sell their name to be used. You ever wonder how some of these people are so busy and they still write all these wonderful articles all over the place? Because they're not writing them. And so it's all shaped and modified to get you to follow down a certain path. And by the way, if you come up with something and they don't like it, they're going to come after you. Let me give you one example here. Anybody remember Fast and Furious? All right. For those of you who don't remember Fast and Furious, the Obama administration, Attorney General Eric Holder, basically had a program where the ATF was selling drugs to Mexican cartels. Weapons to Mexican cartels. And so they were actually taking weapons across the border into Mexico and selling them to the drug cartels. All of this blew up in their face when one of our border security agents was killed by one of the weapons that we sold to the cartel. Okay? Well, I won't go through the whole story. if you're interested, I'll show you where to find it. But all this started blowing up. Well, at one point, I'm going to read from The Smear, How Shady Political Operatives and Fake News Control What You See. This is by Cheryl Atkinson, who's an award-winning journalist and has been very frustrated by this stuff happening. And this was something she was researching when she was at CBS, I believe. Yeah, CBS. At one point during the Fast and Furious scandal, someone inside the government trying to destroy Dotson, who was a federal agent, a federal border control agent, who decided to blow the whistle on this program that was happening. So under our laws, somebody in an agency is supposed to always be able to go to a congressman or whoever and say, hey, this is going on, so that oversight can be there so that it can be fixed, right? Well, a new person came in. They basically said, we want to get our numbers down. We don't want to have as much corruption in our department. They're like, okay, well, how are we going to do that? We're going to do it by changing the way we report the numbers. They didn't really want to get rid of the corruption. They just wanted to make it look like there was less corruption. Okay? So he gets involved in this. It says, Dotson leaked to the press a highly sensitive document about his undercover work at the ATF. He was an ATF agent. And the press published it. He says it put his life in danger. It was later revealed that the source of the improper leak, let me say this again, the government trying to destroy Dotson, the government trying to destroy the whistleblower, leaked to the press a highly sensitive document about his undercover work with the ATF. That's serious. And the press published it. It put his life in danger. It was later revealed that the source of the improper leak was none other than Obama's U.S. Attorney for Arizona, Dennis Burke, who oversaw ATF's Fast and Furious case. After Burke was exposed as the leaker of the confidential documents on Dotson, he was forced to resign. I say, heck with that. He should be in a federal prison is where he should be. Just a little taste, okay? All right, so let me finish this up. Cryptocurrency. A few years ago, Trump hated cryptocurrency. This year, we're going to be the cryptocurrency capital of the world, okay? And people are recognizing, it's interesting what's going on there. He accepts Bitcoin for donations. Harris has said, now it's interesting because he says he's going to allow the crypto market to grow. She says she's going to allow it as well, but she's going to regulate it, which brings me to regulation, because that is one of the biggest difference between conservatives and progressives. Progressives want to regulate everything. One of the biggest things Trump did when he came into office last time was cut federal regulations like crazy. Biden got into office, he added a bunch of regulations like crazy. Now, here's the interesting thing to me about regulations. I don't think any of us want to live in a world where there's absolutely no regulations. You don't want the bank to be able to tell you that your APR is going to be this, and then next year you find out they've raised it 3 times and you didn't know about it. We want fair practices. There needs to be some law enforcement of different things that happen. Most conservatives, however, believe that the government goes too far in that and regulating things too much. Now, here's the thing that's interesting to me, is that while progressives want to regulate pretty much every aspect of our life, cryptocurrency, education, there's been many progressives have said that parents who homeschool their children need to go through background checks and need to have teacher certifications to educate their own kids. Okay? So they want to regulate everything. They are the homeowner Nazis. Sorry, did I say that out loud? If y'all never lived in that type of situation, you may not know what I'm talking about. But on the other hand, when it comes to abortion, they don't want hardly any regulation. You don't have to have a doctor on site. You don't have to have follow-up. They treat abortion as if it is getting a Band-Aid. They refuse to regulate it. When Kermit Gosnell, remember up in Pennsylvania, and they went in, they found all these babies in jars and all this stuff, and it was an absolute horrid place, rats running everywhere and all of that. They couldn't do much to him because there's no regulation on the industry. So isn't it interesting they want to regulate what they don't like, but they want to not regulate what they do like? What's regulation do? And if all regulation suppresses our freedom and suppresses our ability to make a profit. That does not mean we shouldn't have some, because we want a threshold where we're safe, but we don't want it to be way up here where it's choking us every time we turn around. Okay? All right.
When it didn't make any sense.
Right.
Like buying foreign oil, it affects the same environment that it does over here. We can't do it because of regulation.
Yeah, exactly. We can spend more money and pollute it more by all the ships that we bring over. Yeah, and by the way, our refining, both our drilling and our refining capacity is far better than almost everybody else in the world. We're cleaner, we do it better, but we can't do it because of these government people. But we can buy from one of our enemies, like Iran, which that's been off and on, but at any rate, and have them ship it all the way halfway across the world to us, creating more CO2, right? It makes no sense whatsoever, and we could talk about that on many fronts. The transgender issue, obviously, that's a big one. I've spent some time on that. If there's any questions, let me know. They're accusing Donald Trump of wanting to give amnesty to police officers. Meanwhile, they often want to defund police or create community programs with counselors who will help the drug addicts become better people. How many of you had thugs in high school? Okay, how many of you were thugs in high school? How did they respond to people trying to help them with their personality problems? Huh?
They didn't like it, I mean, just don't need it, whatever, you know.
It didn't help them, did it?
No.
They might have played along with it to get what they wanted, but it's like these people have no realization of who people are. Some people just need to be put in jail. It's just that simple. And the restrictions, now, there are bad cops, and when there are bad cops, there are laws to deal with them, and we need to, and we need to get past the thin blue line sometimes and say, you don't cover for people who do this stuff. My dad was a cop my whole life, and he hated crooked cops, and that's what we need is more cops who hate crooked cops.
Yes.
But this idea that we're somehow going to placate prisoners and we're going to make everything better with, what's the word they use now?
Kinder, gentler.
No, it's, well, I can't remember the term they use now, but it's basically where we reform people and they... Now, what has worked in prison, by the way, that we have statistics to prove on, is things like Chuck Colson's prison fellowship, which has reduced the recidivism rate, or the people that go back into prison, considerably for people who went through that program. But then they're making it illegal for prisons to have it because it's Christian-based. Meanwhile, the biggest conversion rate to Islam in the United States is happening in our prison system. Don't believe it? Go look it up. It's amazing that our government will allow that to happen, but then they'll stop the Christians from helping. All right, First Amendment, Second Amendment, we didn't really get time to go to that, but that's all right. We'll cover that anytime. The school stuff. Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention to you on this Media Matters stuff, this Brock stuff, a lot of these things. Media Matters is a 501c3 organization. Who else is a 501c3 organization? Churches. Isn't it interesting that churches are told they can't talk about politics, but Media Matters can be totally in the tank for one party and smear people with their donated dollars, and there's never any talk about taking away their tax exemption, but everybody's always screaming churches should have theirs removed. Next time somebody says to you churches shouldn't be tax exempt, tell them, well, if that's the case, then all these super PACs and these media smear corporations and all of them need to have theirs pulled too, and just see what they say, because they're going to be like, what? Billionaires are putting millions and millions of dollars to manipulate the elections of our country with 501c3 organizations, and then screaming that the pastors need to be shut up. I hope this is shocking you. All right. We've talked some about climate, border policy, and I'll stop there unless y'all have a question or something. We are not racist. We are not against people from other countries. We do missions to people from other countries. There are many great people in the United States who were not born in the United States. However, it is incumbent upon every society to control their borders so they know who is coming in. And it is absolutely ridiculous that we have had terrorists come in and gang members come in and sex trafficking go in and out and drug trafficking go in and out, all because people have a political motive to change the elections. Obama's threshold that he considered serious was way, 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 way below what's currently happening. Obama was actually known as a pretty good border president. That may surprise some of you. By the time Trump got done, and it's interesting that he keeps getting accused of being the problem. He's the reason that we're having all these problems now. When he left office, we were deporting more people than were coming across the border illegally. So we actually had a net negative immigration. Now, what does that mean for us as Christians? One, we can obviously talk about keeping our families safe, and we all know some of the implications of some of the people who've come across the border. We know the people who have been killed, the 12-year-old girl that was raped and left, the other young college student, many people through, and some of these people, they were already deported and they just came back in. When Trump says they're emptying out their prisons, of course they are. Why should they fund them when they can send them here and let us take care of them? Now, he's exaggerating a little bit, probably in the number, but he's not wrong completely. So we're concerned about that from both a moral and a political standpoint. Beyond that, as Christians, we need to look for every opportunity to win all the people that God allows to get in here. And so we've got to be very careful that when we're talking to individuals that we're not attacking them. Matter of fact, many of the people that are here, and I'm not talking about the criminals by any means, I'm talking about the ones who are just looking for a better life, they were encouraged by the rhetoric of our politicians. They are as much victims as anybody is in this stuff. Because they were all standing outside the gates as Biden was getting inaugurated. Why? Because word was out. He was going to let them in. Now, if you're struggling in Honduras and you can't get anything to eat for your kids And all of a sudden you hear, oh, the United States is letting people in and let them work and let them make. Wouldn't you come too? I would. We need workers. We need both technological workers and professional workers, and we need farm workers. We in Sampson County, the reason we have so many immigrants is because we have a lot of farms that need to be farmed. And a lot of Americans won't do that kind of work anymore. So we need them, but we need to know who they are when they come across that border, and it needs to be done in a organized and legitimate way. And for that, I do not blame the immigrants for that. I blame the government for that. It's their job to fix the problem so that the people that come in, we know who they are, where they are, and whether they should have a right to be here or not. Because we don't want just anybody coming in. And if you don't believe that, then just open up the door to your house and just let anybody in. I don't see any of these I don't see Biden opening the gate at the White House. I don't see any of these Hollywood stars opening up the gates to their mansion. They got plenty of floor space for them to come. They can all bathe in the swimming pools. But it's interesting how they're so for everybody coming in, but they don't want it in their backyard, just like Martha's Vineyard. Because they know that for them personally, it's not necessarily a good thing. Well, if it's not good for them personally, then it's not good for America. We need to know who's coming in. And America should be compassionate. Ukraine war is another one we don't talk about, but that's kind of a similar thing. We need to take care of ourselves first. Let me put it in the flying terms. Put the mask on yourself first, then help those around you. If we can't get our own mess together, we're just creating a problem that's not good for anybody. But in all of this, I come back to, we need to be doing the best we can as a church to help people that are looking for Jesus, to minister to our culture. And that's our first responsibility, is to preach the gospel to the world. And so we do have to be careful with the rhetoric, and I hope I haven't said anything too upsetting tonight to anybody, because I do not hate immigrants. I have many friends who are immigrants that I love dearly. Not all of them have come here even legally. Many of them have, but some of them have not. But again, I don't blame them for something that our government created. They're still illegal. That still needs to be fixed. And I'm not ready to let them vote. I don't know if that gives you a little hint on that last question on the ballot, but okay. Thoughts, comments?
I did have two things in my notes. You might have covered it if I wasn't here. On Social Security, on that, and then the central bank digital. Is that a little bit different than the...
Oh, yeah. Okay. First of all, Social Security, we're in bad shape. We're a few years away from it being completely insolvent. So basically, Kamala can tell everybody that Trump's going to bankrupt us, but the reality of it is there's been plenty of presidents since Franklin Delano Roosevelt who've done that. That is one of the worst systems in the world unless you're a politician. Because if we think about this, most of you in this room who are middle-aged or older, if the money that's been taken out of you for Social Security had been put in mutual funds, you'd be millionaires right now. Mm-hmm. But now you're going to be lucky you get a few $100s a month. The system is crooked. It's a Ponzi scheme. It is a government-endorsed Ponzi scheme.
And they use it for a slush fund for anything.
Absolutely, they do. It has been a scam since day one, and it's not the safety net that it was promised to be. It's just not. Now, some people have done what, but I mean, if you guys know anybody who's gotten Social Security, you know it's been ridiculous. They've worked their whole life, and now they get enough to barely survive, if that. And then the government who took all that money from you lectures you and tells you, now keep in mind that every single time you get paid, 15.5% gets pulled out of your paycheck. 15.5%. Now, okay, you say, well, no, I only pay 7.25%. Well, by the time your employer kicks in, and how many of you know that becomes a part of your salary package? So it's 15.5%. So imagine if for the last 30 years you had taken 15.5% of your income and put it into a mutual fund or into real estate or into something else. You'd be filthy rich right now. This place would be looking nice because we'd have everything all fixed up. More land to go. So, yeah. But now, the idea was this generation is going to pay for this generation, this is going to pay for this generation. So the problem is now we're in a situation where people are having less children, so the population is actually in decline. So there's not enough people to pay for this generation that's retiring. And that's one of the reasons they want immigrants to come in. But in order for that to even begin to work, they have to be on the tax rolls, not just simply here. Because right now, there's way too much of the people that are coming in getting money from the government instead of putting money back into the government. And that's going to be one of the arguments the politicians are going to make to you is, well, we need to make them citizens so that they'll be paying and they'll be helping out with all this stuff. And you've just been swindled again. I'm not very positive on the government tonight, am I? Sorry about that. It would be really, really nice if we could just replace them with a bunch of people that understood what it meant to be American again. But we'd have to do it all at once to get rid of all these special interests and all these little parties and all this other stuff that goes on. I am not anti-government. I believe in the government. I hate corruption. And I hate people who play power for their own purposes. They are not, most of them are not public servants. They are public thugs. Yeah. Sorry, that was a little too strong, wasn't it? Moving right along. And the other was digital, central bank digital currency, CDBC. So basically what the idea behind central bank digital currency is that it is a crypto technology. So it's the same as Bitcoin or Ethereum. Not exactly the same, but the same principles as that. So it's a digital currency. There are many advantages of cryptocurrency, and maybe we'll do a talk on this sometime where I can go into it a little bit deeper. There are many advantages to it. For example, the ability we could really clean up a lot of our record keeping, for example, with like Ethereum, for example. The thing with Ethereum is that your payment and your proof of your receipt, so to speak, your deed, whatever. Let's make it a house. So you buy a house with Ethereum. Okay, that deed actually gets attached to that transaction digitally. So now you don't need a piece of paper. So all this, what do they call it? Real estate fraud. It's real estate theft, or where they steal your deed. Have you seen them doing that? So that would get rid of that completely because now it's on the transaction as that. It's you can't go back and if you know anything about computer systems, you can usually go in like at a bank or wherever and change stuff beforehand. Now, your accounting system won't let you do it, but a programmer can do it. Somebody that knows what they're doing, they can get in there and change that. That's impossible with cryptocurrency because what happens is when that thing is verified, once that transaction is verified, any changes to it, the whole system knows there's been a change. And so it automatically flags that as a false transaction and kicks it out. And that's the simple terminology for it. But that's basically what happens.
Can it be hacked?
Your account can be hacked. They can take your cryptocurrency just like they can your bank money. But what they can't hack is the transactions. The transactions are unhackable. So the history of what happened to this house or what happened to this car, that's always permanent. Okay?
So you can get your money back?
Theoretically, if the laws allow it and so forth and so on. Now, with cryptocurrency, I mean, there's been a ton of people who've let people get their information off their phone and they took the money and it's like a bank transfer. It's gone. So there are problems, but I won't get that deep. But what I'm saying is there's some really cool stuff. But with that comes privacy issues because now everything you do is tracked. Because everything is a permanent stamp. Now, in the hands of Bitcoin or in the hands of Ethereum or in the hands of whatever, there's a million of these things out there now. Trump's working on his own cryptocurrency now, by the way. And then there's non-fungible tokens and there's all this other stuff. I'm not getting into all that. But anyway, there's all these different things. But in that world, you're dealing with a system that's decentralized. Okay? So in other words, there are computers all over the world that are tracking those transactions. And you knock out half of those computers, the other half still know about it. Okay? It's like the internet. It's like once it's there, it's there. It's almost impossible to get rid of unless there's like nuclear bombs all over the world. So it's very, very secure. Central bank digital currency is controlled by the Federal Reserve or by the World Bank, depending on how they end up doing it.
So are they still crooked?
Oh, yeah.
Is that, okay. That's what-
In many ways. They're corrupt. I'll use corrupt
there you
instead of
go.
crooked.
Not crooked,
Same thing, only different.
corrupt.
Huh?
Same thing, only different.
Same thing. Only different. Yeah, and we can, maybe when we do some of the end time stuff, we can talk about how some of this stuff's working together. But just from a standpoint of that, now you're talking about all those transactions are not distributed across the world to a bunch of private individuals who are now working on their computers and blah, blah, blah. Now they're controlled by the central mainframes in the World Bank or these other banks or whatever. So that gives the banks even more control. Their connections with the government now gives the government the ability to track anything and everything you do.
So my last thought, we need to go home and dig us a big hole and put a lot of cash in there.
Problem is, if they implement central bank digital currency, then your currency won't be worth anything. You'll have a limited amount of time to exchange that into digital currency, and that'll be the end of currency.
That won't be no good.
Yeah, so hiding cash ain't gonna cut
No.
it.
You just hear people say that, I'm gonna go to the bank,
Yeah.
because all these theories they hear, and their bank's gonna close down on them in 6 months or a
Well,
year, and they're gonna get all their cash.
Now that's a little different. Like what happened in Greece, that could happen here too, but that's a little different.
Yeah.
If they implement this new system, then everybody will have to go to this new system. Now, there still may be hedges against that, and there's a lot of things that I don't have time to get into tonight. But I will say that cash has never been the best asset to hold on to anyway, although some people think it is. You're better off with real estate. You're better off with gold. You're better off with something that has. I tell you, if things get really, really bad, the best thing you can have is a closet full of food. You know, you can't eat gold. You can eat rice, and beans. Dave Ramsey says rice and beans, beans and rice. But yeah, so yeah, that's not the solution at all. But and that would be the other side of this that you have to understand is that I do not believe it's a conspiracy theory to believe that some people, not everybody in the government, but that some people in the government and a lot of people in business and stuff like that, they want to see the collapse of our current system so that this new system can be put in place. The way you always think about it, every single revolution in history has been the overturning of an old system into a new system, whether it was one like our revolution or one like the French Revolution or one like the revolution in Russia with the czars being kicked out. Every single one had something to do with a change. And they didn't continue on with those government dollars or those government rubles or those government whatever they had. They went to the new systems that fit into the new thing. And a lot of people are calling it the Great Reset, that they're looking for a way to reset. And I guarantee you, there's a reason that Bill Gates is buying up so much farmland right now. Go check it out. He's buying it by the millions of acres. And he and a lot of very wealthy people want a world currency because they'll be the ones on top when it all settles, or at least they think they will. It doesn't always work that way. The French found out it didn't quite work that way for some of them. Some of them, their heads rolled, literally. Unless they had a basket underneath them. That kind of stopped it. But at least Judah got that. All right, anything else? I know this has been intense. None of this is intended. And you don't see me all scared and frightened and all that stuff. We're not to be that. We need to be aware. We need to be wise. We need to see what's coming. We need to be able to be articulate about this when other people ask us about it. But no matter what happens, we have Jehovah Jireh. We have God on our side. Now, I do think that a lot of people are going to be deceived because they have their heads stuck in the sand. And if it's going to happen, it's kind of like, do you want to know you've got cancer if you've got cancer? You should.
Yes.
Now, there's some people that don't. They pretend like it's not there. Anybody ever known anybody like that? What happened to them? They died earlier than they needed to because they stuck their head in the sand. And so your best opportunity to fulfill the work of God in your life is to be aware that these things can happen. I didn't say any of them were going to definitely happen, although some of these things I think you can see they're already here and they're just starting. But some of these things, they may not happen at all. I do believe we'll end up with a world system but that's going to be when the Antichrist, it may be before the Antichrist takes over, but we definitely know there will be one when the Antichrist takes over. So some of these things will happen, some of them may not, but by just being aware of them and knowing what's out there, maybe we'll be a little smarter to deal with them. And maybe we will have some of the ideas, maybe not taking all the money out of the bank, but figuring out a way or maybe we do take it out of the bank, but we don't hide it in the ground. We look for ways that we can make sure that we've got what we need and our family needs, our friends, the best we can help our neighbors as well. I think that's wise. But we don't live in fear. We can't control anything. And Kirk Cameron said the other day, now he's not exactly somebody I put on my prophet list, but he's a good guy, I think. He seems like a good guy. He suggested that maybe God was going to give us one more chance with this election and give us another time where we'll have some opportunity to get better ready. But I think most people that are looking at the world, they know some things are going to go bad, or at least they're heading in that direction. And so if they do, what do we need to do to get ready for that? Those are the things we need to be praying for.
So you think if either if my family talked about this the other night, but if Harris gets it, that it's probably going to be trouble, and then either way, if Trump gets it, I mean, is it you think there'll be a war or a bunch of rioting all over, or if either or?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, there's going to continue to be conflict no matter who's in. And if you remember the last time that Trump was in, there was a lot of people fighting him, including people in his own party. For the first 2 years, he couldn't get hardly anything. I mean, it's amazing what he did accomplish because of the people that were fighting him, including his own party. Yeah. Hopefully that won't happen this time, but definitely be people on the other side fighting him, and there may be riots. There may be riots either way. I'm hoping conservatives don't do it, but they may. Let's face it, there's a lot of conservatives out there who they need Jesus. Yeah. I'll just put it that way. But I think the biggest difference is that with a conservative government, if we get that, and we don't know what the Senate's going to look like yet, in the House and all that, but with a more conservative government, it's going to be an easier time for Christians. And so Christians will be able to do the work, if they'll do the work. Do we even have a right to ask God for that anymore, considering that we haven't done such a great job? But let's try anyway. And then there are a lot of people in the progressive side that absolutely hate conservative Christians. They have called for them to be put in internment camps. They have called for us to be silenced. They have called for pastors to be shut down. They have called for churches to lose their tax exemption. So many different things. So in that way, that does two things. One is it makes it harder for us. The other thing is the economic policies and stuff, I believe, are going to be terrible for us. And then the other thing that happens is that it stirs up God's wrath and anger because he sees what's happening to the things he loves and the people that he loves. The babies and the people. Well, babies are people too, but you know what I mean. Babies and the older people. Okay, anybody, anything else? Because next week we're switching the subject. Next week we're reading from the Psalms, and I don't know yet. But please do pray, and please don't get worried, don't get anxious. Cast all your care upon Him. But at the same time, we've got to be wide. We've got to be wide awake. We got to be wide awake. Okay. All right. Then who wants to close us in prayer? All right.
Dear God, we thank you for another night and Wednesday night class. And Father, I mean, you know, it's been kind of hard taking it in, but we're just thankful that you are right here by our side, helping us understand it and help us to be alert and aware of what's going on, but yet not be fearful and not be scared to do a certain thing or go a certain place. And we're just thankful that you have our back, and God, that you are the King of Kings and Lord of our lives, and you are what we need, Father. And we just pray for those, Lord, that are on the straddling the fence, God, right now with their lives personally. We pray that they will make the right decision in their life and be in the right situation and accept you as Christ, Lord, before something goes bad in their life. And we just thank you again for our teacher and for his wisdom and knowledge that he can just share with us and us know what to do and what steps to take. We just thank you for our church and for our church body. And we just pray that you'll bring us all together here Sunday safe. And Lord, we just pray for numbers in our church. God, we pray for our chairs to be filled Sunday morning. And we'll give you the praise and all the glory for it. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you all. And we'll see you hopefully Sunday.